6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and start our meeting of the January Iredell-Statesville Schools Board of Education. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight to the meeting. We've got quite a few items of business to do, and I will go ahead and mention that when we got in tonight, we received a notice left up here that our projector system that belongs to the county and the county commissioners use in their meeting is currently not working. They hadn't been able to figure out what the problem is, so they're still going through the mechanical parts of fixing it. So the county personnel asked us to give their apologies to you all tonight that we don't have a projector system to project our agenda. And I think you all have copies that want it out there on the back table. So we'll move through, and I'll try to introduce each subject as we go along as well. We generally begin our meeting with a moment of silence, so I'll ask if you all will join me for the first few moments to bow and meditate in your own way about the business that we have before us, especially keeping the students of our district in mind. So if you will, bow with me. Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll begin the meeting with the consent agenda. We have administration. The first item is the budget amendment. Dr. Hargrave.
Dr. Cash, Mr. Johnson, members of the board, Melissa could not be with us tonight, but she did present the budget amendments in detail at the committee of the whole meeting. And since there have been no changes, no additions, so if you have any questions, Mr. Johnson, I would be glad to try to answer those tonight.
We did review these in detail last Monday at the committee of the whole meeting. Are there any questions that have come up since then for Dr. Hargrave and Mr. Johnson? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move then to the personnel portion of the consent agenda. We have items B, C, D, and E, the acceptance of resignations, retirements, rehires, terminations, and leaves of absence, the acceptance of classified personnel, approval of licensed personnel, and approval of administrative appointments. Dr. Lassane.
Okay. Dr. Cash, Mr. Johnson, members of the Board of Education, you have had the opportunity to review the January personnel report. Are there any questions?
Questions for Dr. Lassane regarding personnel? No, thank you. We've also had the December 2nd Committee of the Whole minutes and the December 9th Board of Education minutes. If there are no additions or corrections to those minutes, I'll entertain a motion that we approve the consent agenda items in the minutes from December.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda and the minutes from December.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Dr. Hargrave, you wanted to make an introduction, I believe.
Yes, Dr. Cash. Last month, Ms. Tina Wilson could not be with us, and I want to take the opportunity to recognize her tonight. Tina is our new child nutrition director, and I'd like for her to stand. Tina has been with the Iredell-Statesville school system for 15 years, 10 years as a cafeteria manager, and the last 5 years as a supervisor for the middle and high schools. Prior to that, she has been a dietary manager. She has been a restaurant manager. She is a North Iredell High School graduate. She is very active in the community, and she loves to read and travel. I have shared with Tina that taking on this new role, her reading and travel time may be cut significantly because of all the work that has to go into child nutrition. But we're very happy to have her in this position, so please join me in giving her a round of approval.
Thank you. Now come into our recognition portion of the meeting. We have the Community Schools Award, Ms. Susie Weiberg.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Well, for almost 2 years, Maggie Shoebridge, an Edward Jones financial consultant, has taken it upon herself to recognize the valuable volunteers in our schools. Once a month, Maggie and her real right hand, Cindy Floyd, who is also here tonight, ask a principal who in their building deserves recognition for working above and beyond the call. And Maggie knows firsthand the time and energy good volunteers bring to a building. Her 2 children went through our schools, and Chris and Maggie Shoebridge are were very involved in the education of their children and remain very involved in our community. When a business person takes it upon themselves to give accolades to the volunteers all around our district in almost every single school, they deserve thanks as well. Maggie and Cindy do this not for any recognition of themselves, but to send some well-deserved praise and gifts to the many volunteers who give their time to our students and staff. Thank you, Maggie Shoebridge and Cindy Floyd, for the effort you put into showing gratitude to our volunteers, because we appreciate you. So Mr. Rogers has a certificate for you suitable for framing and hanging in your lush palatial offices. So if you would please come forward, that would be lovely. Thank you, Mr. Rogers, and thank you guys very much.
Next, we have the District Holiday Card Art Recognition. Don Creason.
First thing I need to do is correct my original memo to you. The first line says 20 entries. There were actually a little over 200 entries from across the district for our annual holiday card that we distribute to other school systems, to all of our schools, and to many of our local elected officials and community and business leaders. So there were lots and lots of entries, and you can imagine how difficult it was to narrow down those entries. We originally were going to pick 4 winners from 4 different grade groups, K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12, but we quickly realized that that was impossible. So we added a 5th category of Superintendent's Choice. And I'm kind of excited to introduce these guys to you tonight. Their artwork is amazing. It's featured right now on our website, so please be sure to check that out. If you didn't get to see the cards yourself, check that out. Also want to thank Toshiba Business Solutions. They provide copying services to our schools for sponsoring this contest. Tonight, each of these winners will receive a gift card courtesy of Toshiba Business Solutions. Tonight, we're pleased to congratulate the following. The K2 winner, Lainey Estes from Central Elementary School. Come forward, Dr. Cash, would you? If you guys will come forward and step on up, I'll get a picture in just a second. 3-5, Nayeli Ramirez, 3rd grade from Troutman Elementary in the 3-5 division. In the 6-8 division, Jacob Levis, 8th grade from Troutman Middle. In the 9-12 division, Kayla Wolf in the 10th grade from West Iredell High School. I don't think she's here. And then our Superintendent's Choice Award winner this year is Rachel Reddy in the 12th grade from Lake Norman High School. Let's give these guys another round of applause. Keep going?
Uh-huh.
All right. We're going to move on to the North Iredell High School dairy judging team. Actually, I'm going to,
Vaughn, did
Sorry?
the other person get here, Vaughn? He's not here yet, he's on his way. Would you rather us, we can hold it and move on to the agenda, the rest of the agenda, and come back to it when it gets in? Yeah, that's fine. Just signal whenever he gets in if I don't see him. Don't, let's just hold off.
Got it.
Thanks. And for those of you that have an agenda at your place, item D has been postponed until next month. The presenter for the North Carolina Superintendent of the Year presentation from Mosley Architects apparently came down with the flu today, so he's not able to be here. So,
I just get to keep talking? Okay.
all right,
We'll move on then to the school calendar. That's okay with you?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we're now into the non-consent agenda. For those who are following along, we'll discuss the school calendar for the next year, 2014, 2015, and again, this will require a vote.
Thank you, sir. Just like in the packet that I sent to you guys on Friday, I did collect some feedback on the options presented for the school calendar. We were able to get about 1,000 responses on this year's school calendar, just through online feedback alone. We did also collect some through email, both with our certified and classified staff advisories, who then went back to their school, collected some feedback, and emailed it back to me, the compiled information. Previously, I presented to you guys two options. Tonight, I present to you guys option A for approval for the 2014-2015 school calendar with one minor adjustment. We did receive some feedback late Friday afternoon for us to reconsider the work days in October and November. Our fear was having a work day on a Friday, then asking kids to come back to school on Monday, and then a work day on Tuesday. Attendance that Monday is just going to be horrendous, and I think that makes lots of sense. So if it pleases the board, I would ask you guys to consider allowing us to move the work day on Halloween, actually, October 31st, to Monday, November 3rd. That way we still have two there. That's close to the end of the semester to give teachers some time to do work that they need to do. We still have some in the second semester, and it's not a dead even split between semesters. It ends up being, 91-89, but we think that's probably the best we're gonna do given our constraints. So I would ask for approval on calendar option A with that slight amendment of moving that work day from Friday the 31st to Monday the 3rd. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
2 days in a row?
Yes, it would. It would.
Is that what we want to do? You want 2 work days in a row?
That's our recommendation. One of those we would like to make optional and kind of a school, maybe a school work day if they choose to require it through their school improvement planning process. The other day, possibly November 4th, we would do a required day and add some additional PD to that day.
And I was just reminded today, I was at one of the high schools and, they've begun their exams today. And we were talking about in prior years, when we have had inclement weather, those first 5 days coming back to school, and then they're immediately forced to take exams, and how this is not the best calendar in the world. And we can't help this until we get our legislature to change their mind on setting the start date and the finishing date for our school year. Until that's done, it will continue to be like that, and we can take the risk that, we'll have that same situation happen again. I mean, it could have happened this past week just as easily. And the kids would have had to come back from Christmas break, have no study time or prep time, and be forced straight into exams. And that's not a good situation. It doesn't, it doesn't help the children. It doesn't, it's just not a good situation, so.
I completely understand. One of the other things, just for your information, that we did discuss as possibly it wouldn't help that particular situation was moving one of those 2 work days in November to that second semester. But the way the semesters are already split, with the second semester being 2 days shorter, we were really hesitant to put another work day in that second semester because then they're becoming even more imbalanced. And that was a hesitation on our part. So we really do, from an administrative standpoint, prefer that 91-89 split to keep from shortening that second semester even further.
So we've said this many times, and just like Ms. Bottom says, that this is a legislature thing that's happening because we all know in reference to what the students are doing and when they come back to take the exams, it'd be much better to finish that before Christmas.
Yes, sir. And
So it's the state legislature. It's not your fault, is it? You didn't do it, did you?
I didn't do it.
No, you didn't do it.
You guys didn't do
Okay.
it either.
So it's the legislature, not you.
I will
So-
say,
but-
when I reviewed the feedback in the comments section at the bottom, overwhelmingly, it was clear that there's not an understanding of the legislation and the fact that you guys don't dictate the rules by which we all have to play, and that there is an overwhelming desire by parents to be able to do those exams prior to getting out for winter break so that you flip semesters as soon as students come back. But we all know the constraints under which we work.
But the problem is, it's not even on their radar any longer. At one time, it was an issue. It's not even an issue anymore.
It's been pretty quiet recently.
Ms. Creasaw, what are the total number of days and the total hours with this calendar? Did you?
It's 180 days for students, and then I think it's 215 for 10-month employees. That's the payroll stipulation with state guidelines. As far as the number of hours, that varies. The highest number of hours at the high school level, lowest numbers at our alternative schools and our IB schools, just due to transportation issues. But all of those are still well within the requirement of the hourly recommendation from the state, or the hourly requirement, rather, from the state. We're in there by about 100 hours, even on the bottom level.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions regarding calendar?
One thing I would add is just for the benefit of everyone who is here tonight, I know that we discussed it last Monday. Once you guys approve this, we will take it back to the curriculum and instruction side of the house for them to look at where to place progress reports, report cards, and of course those early release professional development days. And I do believe from earlier discussions with the admin team, there's a look at coordinating possibly with some other school districts for professional development on those early release days so that we can benefit from one another here in the area. But just a reminder that those are not on here yet, so they're coming.
That discussion in place, is there a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion that we approve the calendar as presented, which was option A, with that one change from October to November.
Thank you, sir.
Second. A second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries then. Thank you, Dawn, for all that work. How can you lose an agenda when you're sitting right in front of it? Can somebody ask me theirs or something? Let's see, I guess next is item B, the resolution concerning Senate Bill 402 regarding the 25% requirement in terms of teacher recognitions and awards. Mr. Johnson?
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Cash, members of the board. And Dr. Osana, I'll ask you to step to the microphone because you may have some input in this or answer some questions for us. As you know, last year the General Assembly passed Senate Bill 402. This bill, which is now the law in North Carolina, requires a couple things. Number one, it does away with teacher tenure, and That was no surprise. We knew that that was coming. It was something that we even had input on, and the School Boards Association did support that. The part of the bill that was a surprise to us was the portion of the bill that had to do with identifying the 25% of the most effective teachers in the school system and offering them an incentive of $500 to participate in this law early. Last week during our meeting, we did look at a resolution, and you have a copy of that in your packet. This resolution, if you approve, is a message to the General Assembly. And basically what we're saying with this resolution is that we would like for the General Assembly to reconsider the portion of the law that offers the $500 to our teachers to give up their tenure early. We did have one addition, and that is indicated on your copy of this resolution in red, based on the feedback that we got from Leanne Winter with the School Boards Association. We did add that language to that first paragraph. We have, the HR department has set up and convened a group of teachers. We used our Teachers of the Year with some other employees from other categories of employment, and they have begun work on the process that will be used in our school system to identify that 25%. So we feel like that we got ahead of this very early, and we feel like that we've got a pretty good response for how ISS is going to comply with the law. When we met with our teachers, though, we did get a lot of feedback that there is some disagreement, and not everybody supports, particularly the 25% portion of this law. Today, we did get a response from a survey that we've had posted for quite some time from our teachers asking for their input on whether or not they would support the 25% provision. And you have a copy of that in your packet there in front of you. We got 653 responses across the district, and the portion that I would call your attention to is on the last page. And it is the percentage of our folks that responded to this survey that said that they would be interested in the financial incentive. According to the survey results that we got, 71 of the teachers that responded, or 12%, say that they plan to accept the contract and the financial incentive if it's offered to them. 275 of the respondents, or 47%, say that they would decline the contract and the financial incentive, and 242, or 41%, are not sure yet if they would accept the financial incentive and the contract. There's also, in the information that we provided for you, quite a few comments. And as you read through those comments, I think you will see a common thread that our teachers are concerned that this bill, as it's currently written, if we do identify that 25%, and if they are offered the $500, our teachers are concerned about what that will do to collaboration and teamwork in the schools. And some of those comments are very pointed in saying that our teachers are concerned that it will have a negative impact on morale and that it will deter collaboration at the school level. So again, we're back to our resolution, and some people would say, and it's probably true, that this is a effort in futility. By the time the General Assembly comes back to town and even sees this resolution, we will have already had to move forward with our plan. Some people would consider this a symbolic effort on our part, but I think it does send a clear message that we are listening to our teachers and that we have voiced their concern, and that we are asking the General Assembly to reconsider the portion of the bill that requires us to identify that 25% and offer them a $500 bonus. So between Dr. Lassane and myself, we'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Mr. Johnson, I would like to make one clarification. It's not a $500 bonus. Part of the reason that this is so seen as being very divisive by our teachers is this is a $500 increase to base pay over the course of those 4 years. So that's just one important clarification. As you're looking through the comments and considering this resolution, I think that you will see that teachers are looking for support. They're looking for support from administration. They're looking for support from the Board of Education. And while many of them may not be fully aware of all of the efforts that have already gone forth, I think it does say a lot to say that we are complying with the law, but we don't necessarily see where this is going to be beneficial and to see that potential for creating divisiveness. I would also direct your attention to not only the number of responses, and this survey is open until Wednesday. I don't know that we'll get a change in the trend, particularly if you look at a lot of teachers jumped in and answered this survey immediately. But when you look at the criteria that the teachers selected that they would like to be considered if we have to do this, and we do, the criteria that they would like to see considered, it's very much in line with the work that was conducted by the Teacher of the Year Forum. And so those criteria would include things like evaluation, leadership, attendance, seniority, collaboration, as well as whether or not that person would have any disciplinary reprimands. You can see that the other criteria suggested were rated a lot lower. So I just point that out for your consideration also.
Any comments or questions about this resolution as written?
I have some concerns just based on the comments from Leanne Winter. And, you know, her comment is that she thinks this resolution is ill-advised at this time. And I think it's probably because they're in the preparation stage of putting together their own resolution that they would probably like our backing on as well. But it won't happen until, I suppose, after the session has begun in May. Is that correct? Is that what you understand?
I am not sure about the timeline for their resolution. I'm not sure about that timeline, but I do know that the morale for our teachers now is something that we are really, really trying to stay on top of and be able to let them know that we are doing our best work with regards to Senate Bill 402.
I think, too, that if the School Boards Association does draft a resolution and send it to you, there is absolutely nothing wrong with approving both resolutions. And the resolution that is before you tonight is a little bit proactive, and it is, I do think we're a little bit ahead of the curve. I do think that you will see a resolution that is drafted by the School Boards Association. But as Dr. Lassane has pointed out, I think this sends a clear message to our teachers that we're listening to you, and we're trying to do all that we can within our power to support you throughout this process. We have every intention of obeying the law. The only thing we're saying to the General Assembly is we wish you guys had really thought through this 25% and the extra pay, because it is creating divisiveness, and it does threaten collaboration at the teacher level.
Just for the purpose of the public that's here, let's explain who Leanne Winter is. She's the attorney and registered lobbyist for the North Carolina School Board Association, who we are a member of, and every LEA across the state is a member of the School Board Association. I'm just going to read a couple things from her email here, some of which Ms. Bonham's already pointed out. She says this pretty strongly. While the North Carolina School Board Association supports our teachers across the state and wants all of our teachers to be fairly compensated, we believe passage of this resolution or anything like it is ill-advised. This is a symbolic ask at best, given the General Assembly does not come back into session until Wednesday, May 14th, 2014. She then goes on to say, given the current attitude of some in the General Assembly toward the NCAE, passage of their resolution may prove problematic. Please keep in mind that this issue that you are being asked to take a position on via the proposed resolution is just one of many issues on which school boards work. And in closing, she says, in the coming weeks, we will be working on a resolution for your consideration in support of teachers that will specifically address compensation issues. Given the legislative session does not begin until May, we want to make sure that the content and timing of such resolutions are appropriate. I don't always agree with Leanne Winter on everything, but she's a pretty sharp attorney and was voted one of the most effective lobbyists in Raleigh. I think we need to give some credence to her advice.
May I ask the question for clarity? Was that email regarding the Iredell-Statesville Schools proposed resolution or the NCAE proposed resolution?
The two are, to answer your question, it was regarding the NCAE resolution. The two were pretty similar except for the language we added about the 3 years, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Yeah.
And I want to be clear that a no vote does not mean that you are against teachers. It means that you're listening to the people that you're paying pretty good money to be your lobbyist in Raleigh, and they know the attitudes in Raleigh a lot better than we do.
Well, as a lifelong member of NCAE, I would have to support them. I don't see any problem with voting for both of them. And of course, I met with the group of Teachers of the Year, and they asked me my advice, and I told them that under no circumstances as a teacher of 35 years would I have given up my tenure for any reason, because we struggled a long time to get tenure to begin with. And so teachers in this system, like all over the state of North Carolina, are looking to people like us to provide all of the support that we can give them. I personally think that a $500 raise in salary to give up your tenure is a slap in our faces. And under no circumstances would I give up my tenure, and under no circumstances would I take a measly $500 raise. It's that simple.
Well, I would like to, I think, make one clarification point here to our public members tonight that may not have all the information or understand exactly what this means. I think all these points are well taken. We're, I think, as a board, trying to decide how best to address our state legislature, who has brought on us some rules in the form of law that are changing the way teachers are awarded not only the tenure versus contract employment, but also how we reward good teachers in terms of having to select out a 25% portion. We think we have 100% good teachers, and when we don't, we try to coach them and work with those that aren't effective and make them all work together. And our whole sense of being as a board and as a school administration over the past 10 or 12 years has been to promote collaboration and encourage teamwork and give teachers every reason not to be afraid to work together at different grade levels and among different schools, and also that we can bring the best teaching practices out there based on our good teachers' experiences, so they can share with each other and bring the teaching methods that work best into that classroom, so that all students across the district have an opportunity to benefit from that. We feel that what the legislature has done by asking us to select 25% and reward them with a greater raise or promise them a contract at the expense of their tenure is a dangerous move that's going to deter, number one, deter good teachers from staying in teaching in North Carolina, and certainly deter students who might be interested in teaching from going into colleges and planning to have a teaching certificate and come back to this state to teach. We just feel like this has not been thought out very well by our legislature, and I think our point here, however the vote on this particular resolution goes, is not a message to whether or not this board supports teachers and supports collaboration, but it's merely a method by which we think we can be most effective as a board. So I think whatever, it goes without saying that we support our teachers and that we don't really like these laws that have been given to us this year. We do plan to obey the law because that's expected of us, but we just don't know what is the best way to get the legislators' attention to try to get them to reconsider this. So with that, any
Dr.
other
Cash?
discussion? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I do want to point out one other thing. There are actually 2 points just to remember for the board's consideration. Keep in mind that what we're talking about here, the piece of the legislation, is not for a lifetime. It's for this part of the bill that we call Phase 2, which is a decision that is made this year, and this is an important point for the public also. It's a decision that has to be made by the end of this year that affects the next 4 years. And nothing can be changed in that decision that is made this year. Also, given the timeline, since we're talking contracts, and you're familiar with how the contracts come before you, we will be bringing the model, the final model, to you next month. March, we have to start assessing teachers across that criteria. By the time the General Assembly comes back in session in May, we will already be bringing second readings to you for those contracts. So I just thought it was important for you to understand that timeline, that by the time the General Assembly comes back in, this process that's going to affect the next 4 years for teachers will pretty much already be done.
I think that's why it's important to point out in her memo to us that Leanne Winter says this is pretty well a lesson in futility. This is a symbolic gesture because by the time the General Assembly sees this resolution, the law will have already been obeyed and we will have complied with all the components of it. It is somewhat symbolic on our part. But it sends a message to the teachers that we are listening.
Any other points for discussion? Or if not, do we have a motion whether or not to approve the resolution?
No, I'll make the motion to approve the resolution and send it.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution as written. Any further discussion?
Let me add to this then at this point, I can say that. I mean, I'm just like Mr. Shoemaker says, whatever Leanne Winter says is really good. There's no doubt about that. She could take each of these 6 paragraphs that she has here and add 6 more paragraphs to each of the 6 paragraphs. And none of it would be incorrect. I'm not saying it would be superfluous. It would be all correct and be all good. I'm thinking that if NCAE wants to, or EA wants to send a resolution to the legislators, let's do that. And then if the North Carolina School Board Association wants to send one, let them do that. If John Brown in Watauga County wants to send one, let him send it too. If they get it in March or April or May, and there are 2 of them, then let them look at 2. If there are 37 of them, let them look at a stack of resolutions, basically which would be saying that you have done something that is not good. Chances are, we know, and we know what's going to happen to the resolutions. And chances are we know what will happen in the change of the law. But at least the resolutions are there. If we don't say something about we don't like this, then like we've said before, they'll assume that well, you like that, and that's okay, and everybody's happy, and we'll go on with doing stupid stuff. Well, send them something that says that that's not what we want to do.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and maybe, what Leanne, might as well be saying as well is get those teachers out there making the phone calls to the legislators, buttering the bread before, buttering the path before the legislature gets in session. And, talk to your legislators, talk to Robert Brawley, talk to Rena Turner, talk to our neighboring legislators and let them know, but, just based on what Leanne says and my trust in her, I do support the teachers, and I do want them to know that, I want to give them a pat on the back every chance I get, but, this is, I just worry that we might be doing something that's going to hurt us in the end.
Mr. Kelly, I appreciate all your points. I guess the bottom line is, and whether we like it or not, we're not a member, this board is not a member of the NCAE. We're a member of the North Carolina School Board Association, and I think we should take their advice.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the resolution as written. We'll ask for a vote now and a show of hands. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. And show hands. Let's, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we have 4. Those opposed? 3, so 4-3. But so I think, again, that statement says that there's controversy about how the board feels the legislature has transacted its business regarding this issue, but a little bit of difference in opinion as to how we should approach notifying the legislature of that. So we'll continue moving forward. Let's take a break in the non-consent agenda and go back now and finish our recognition portion. I think we have the rest of our North Iredell High School dairy judging team in place. So let's do.
And we're actually going to do 2 recognitions. We have another artist who has joined us this evening too. So if it's okay, it pleases the board, we'll pick that one up as well. Okay. Mr. Sprinkle, would you come forward and talk to these folks a little bit about the process that your kids went through, the dairy judging process? And then Mr. Shoemaker, would you join us down front so that we can get a photo?
Dr. Cash, distinguished members of the board, Superintendent Johnson, we first of all would like to portray our appreciation of your support for all that we do in the career and technical education, and particularly FFA. It's pleasing to me to see things changing in the county somewhat. Everyone still regards FFA as Future Farmers of America, when in reality they changed that name in 1988. It's the National FFA Organization, because we go toward agribusiness more than we do on the farming. Less than 2% of America farms anymore, and Iredell County is blessed with a lot of good farmers. So less than 2% of the people feed not only America, but a large portion of the rest of the world. So we appreciate your support and efforts on our behalf. It's my pleasure to have 4 students here today who participated among 60 FFA chapters in North Carolina and came out the winner. North Iredell participates in, I think, approximately 23 career development events, and the dairy was held back in October, and we were fortunate enough to come out the winners. Pretty much blew the competition away this year, won by 70 or 80 points, which is a lot. It's a very wonderful award that you're giving to the kids tonight. They work hard. These are some of our important members. They're all important, but these are some of the ones that carry the ball very efficiently for us. Go ahead and introduce them. Okay, Ethan Holland, if you would come forward. Ethan is our president of our chapter. He lives on a dairy farm in North Iredell. Wesley Sloan. Excuse me, did I say you were president? Wesley is our president. Ethan is our vice president. Wesley is our president. He's done a wonderful job this year. Luke Holland, Luke, if you'll come forward. Luke is on our junior officer team. He serves as a vice president there. And Alex Fox, Alex, if you'll come forward. Alex is one of our vice presidents on the senior team. This is a senior team. They will be competing in October of 2014 on the national level, so we've got great hopes that they'll continue as state winners and really do well for us up there. I also have two people in the audience that have been very important. Bill Walker. Bill, if you'll hold your hand up there or stand, whatever you want to do. Bill is one of our teachers at North Iredell. We are the largest chapter in the state of North Carolina. We have 5 teacher advisors, which is also the largest in North Carolina. And I want to recognize Nancy Keith. Of course, I'm sure you know Nancy. Nancy, raise your hand or something. She is, of course, Extension chairperson of the County of Extension, and she works very closely with the 4-H, and 2 of our team members up here have done national work with the 4-H team, so we appreciate Nancy's guidance and help also. It's very hard to win a state championship, anything you go at, and we're very proud of them, and I'm proud to present them to you tonight.
These people in the legislature, they don't realize what a burden it puts on kids.
Dr. Cash, members of the board, if we could, I'd like to go back and recognize our holiday art contest winner from the 3rd through 5th grade division. She painted the most beautiful snow-covered Christmas tree. I really want this piece of artwork. It's beautiful. Nayeli Ramirez. She's in 3rd grade. She attends Troutman Elementary School. And again, thank you to Sheba.
Those lights are hot.
Okay, we'll resume our non-consent agenda with item D, policy number 3420, the waiver of retesting provision. Dr. Taylor.
Dr. Cash, members of the board, Mr. Johnson, policy 3420, the student promotion and accountability policy, states that students who score below the proficient level on EOGs and end-of-course exams should be provided interventions and be given an opportunity to retest. Currently, under the new North Carolina accountability model, there is no option for retesting for end-of-course or end-of-grade exams, and the state board has not received their we have not received the revised policy from the state board yet, so we would ask that you vote to waive that retesting policy or retesting portion of policy 3420 at this time. We should be bringing you back additional information and a full policy update later this year.
Is this not something that can be tabled until we know?
We've got exams going on right now, so we want to make sure we get that policy waived so we don't have to worry about that before the high school retakes.
What if we waive it and they don't waive it? What if we waive it and then they don't waive it?
Well, there is no retesting. There is no retesting in the policy. There is no retest provision at all for students. So we would not be retesting. So we just want to make our policy align with what we're actually doing in practice. Yeah, there should be a new policy coming this spring when we get the spring batch of policy updates, but we have not received any any policy updates from the state at this point for policy 3420.
Do you anticipate that it's going to have the retesting
No.
in that policy? Really?
No. If you recall, in the spring of last year, we also waived this policy last April, May, because we knew that there would be no retesting at that point in time, and there is no intent to implement retesting except for the third grade. With the current Read to Achieve legislation, which you've received information on, no other tested subject area or grade level will be provided retesting. So we're just asking to make what we have in policy reflect actual practice, since we will not be implementing interventions or retesting.
Any other discussion or comments? If not, do we have a motion to waive the portion of the policy 3420 regarding retesting?
I think there's confusion here.
Okay.
I'm not sure what it is, but I think there's confusion here in reference to the first two things that are written. Who score below the proficient level will be given an opportunity to retest, and there is no retest option under the new accountability model, and they're not going to change. So if we pass a waiver at this point, does this not go against what it is that they're stating and are not going to change?
The current policy talks about that by policy, we have to provide interventions and give the students an opportunity to then retest and take that test a second time to see if they pass it the second time. That was what we did under the old accountability policy, and that's what our current policy still addresses that. When the North Carolina implemented the new standards and the new tests that we administered this past spring in May, June, under their new model, there is no opportunity for retesting. So there is no requirement for interventions, and there will be no retesting. The state has not modified their policy to take out that retesting and intervention component, so we have not amended our policy to reflect those changes because we haven't gotten that guidance from the state. So instead of bringing you a first reading to omit the retesting and interventions and then having to bring it back again later on this spring when we get the full state board policy, we're just requesting to waive this piece for now, and then we'll bring you the full policy revisions back without that part in it and whatever else the state will add, because I do know there will be some guidance and some information in the accountability policy to reflect the third grade Read to Achieve piece as well.
Mr. Chairman, I move we waive policy 3420 as requested by Dr. Taylor.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? Not all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. The motion carries in 6-1. Next, we have item E, policy number 7100, recruitment and selection of personnel. Dr. Lassane.
Okay. Dr. Cash, Mr. Johnson, members of the board, you've had the opportunity now for 2 readings on policy 7100, recruitment and selection of personnel, policy 7240, the drug-free and alcohol-free workplace. Dr. Cash, just to check for clarity, would you like for us to go ahead and then vote on them individually?
I just realized I'm okay if the board is, for you to go ahead and
Okay.
pass these all in one lump.
Okay. Policy 7410, which is related to career status. Policy 7510, related to leave. Policy 7810, related to the evaluation of licensed employees. And policy 7950, which is related to probationary teachers' non-renewal. Are there any questions regarding any portions of these policies?
Somebody doesn't like genetic information, but besides that,
Well, for the sake of the audience, so they'll know that we're not being haphazard about this, these are all state mandated. They're, in other words, we don't have any choice about it. So that's the reason that we just go ahead and pass them as a group rather than, it is what it is. Yeah.
It's the reason I can say what I can say about genetic information, because that's a mandate, it's gonna be there, and they're gonna extend it as far as they want to at this point.
And again, that is related to actual federal legislation regarding the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act of 2008.
Oh, I'm always jumping headlong into whatever is federal.
Okay.
All right. Is there a motion to? Do them all right. Yes.
Okay. Is that a motion?
We'll make a motion to do them all that she presented just now.
All right. And approve the revisions as stated. Right.
Item D through J, is that correct?
Yeah. So just for clarification, are you making a motion that we approve these as recommended? All right.
And it is,
Just
it's
wanna make sure.
E through J.
D through J. All right. So we have the motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion, second, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Good, that motion
Thank you.
carries then. Thank you. That's all right.
Had to write letters down.
Now, the next, our first readings, which will be discussed by Dr. Hargrave and be brought back next month for an actual vote. So, Hargrave, take those in whatever order you want to do that.
Okay, Dr. Cash, members of the board, Mr. Johnson, for the purpose of the audience, we did discuss each one of these policies in detail at the Committee of the Whole meeting on last Monday. The policies that I'm bringing to you tonight are a first reading and will be available for review for the next 30 days, in which I'll bring them back to you at the next board meeting for a vote. Policy 3640/5130 is the student registration and pre-registration policy. This policy changes to eliminate pre-registration that usually occurred for students of age through our social studies classes. That has now been eliminated with the new legislation. Policy 4120, domicile and residence requirements. The changes in this policy extend the offer of education for EC students through age 22. It was previously age 21. It also clarifies what active duty is for the purpose of admitting students. And in the policy, it says that active duty must be 30 or more days for someone to be able to use active duty as a means to enroll in a student. Policy 5028/6130/7267, which is the automated external defibrillator. This policy provides guidelines for the purpose of owning and operating defibrillators. And I share with you that we do have these at our high schools, and we are currently abiding by the policy as it is written now. Policy 5070/7350, which is the public records retention, release, and disposition. The changes in this policy address the school safety component of the school improvement plan. Policy was changed this summer to say that school improvement plans are public record, but the school safety component of that school improvement plan is not for public review. Okay. Policy 6220, operation of student food services. This policy states that we cannot charge indirect costs to our child nutrition department unless they have a month of operating fund balance. If they do not have a month of operating fund balance, we are unable to charge them indirect costs for the use of our cafeterias. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them at this time.
Comments or questions for Dr. Hargrave? Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the items on the non-consent agenda, and we're now come to time for public comment. We have several people who actually signed the registration sheet out front to speak to the board tonight. Just would like to make a couple clarifying points. When you come up, again, as I call your name, I'll ask the speakers to come to the podium so that you have the microphone there so everyone might hear you. And if you will, state again your name and the general subject that you're talking about. And then I'll ask you to keep your comments to about 3 minutes. And I'll ask Kelly to time the speakers so that we can be fair to everyone. I see the written topic for several speakers is regarding the Making Proud Choices grant issue. And just for clarification, again, we are waiting to hear as a board the final recommendations from our park grant leadership status, and they asked to have another month to continue researching their program information before they make a formal presentation to the board, probably next month. So we are happy to hear any comments the public members that signed up want to make to us. But again, we do not as a board have the final recommendations from our park grant committee yet either. And just again, another point of clarification, not only regarding this topic, but any topic when members speak to the board. For those of you who have not attended one of these meetings before, this is a time that we're glad to hear your comments back. The board will not generally respond back to those comments tonight, but we will take those under consideration when we have our other discussions later on. So we take it all as information that we can use to try to help make our best decisions for the students. So with that being said, the first speaker that signed up is Chip Capps.
Mr. Chairman, before Mr. Capps comes to the podium, may I ask that if there's anybody that did not sign up, if they're here and they want to speak, that we allow them to, as we generally do? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Sorry, Mr. Capps.
Good evening. First, I'd really like to say thanks. This is the second time you've allowed me to appear before the board. If you'll remember, my name is Chip Capps. I'm president of the Guardians of the Children Mooresville chapter. We are a group of bikers. We work to recognize and react to child abuse and to try and educate the public to do the same. When we last spoke, I talked to everyone about the Bully Project. It's a national movement, and with this movement, what we're trying to do is have our kids in our schools sign pledge sheets not to bully. Not only do we ask that they sign pledge sheets not to bully, but we ask that they intervene. Obviously not by any type of physical altercation. We may be dumb, but we're not stupid. But the fact is, they do have all sorts of resources at their disposal in their schools. And that's what we're asking for. They use every resource available. To that end, we are conducting a screening of the Bully Project March 1st, 11 a.m. at the Northview Church of Christ, 2615 Amity Hill Road. Now, we've already got a couple of state representatives that have signed up to join us at this, but our intent was to invite the entire school board and any of those in the school administration that wish to attend. We also have, at that facility, we'll have child care available. The movie is rated PG-13, and while some of the scenes may be a little graphic, they are unfortunately all too true. There's some language in there, really no violence, but some language in there I would probably be uncomfortable with younger kids. So I do thank you again for your time. I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Can you tell us again the date and the time?
Actually, I can do better if you want them. I managed to bring some flyers with me tonight, and I'll be glad to give the board or any of those represented tonight a flyer or 6.
You might want to make sure that the paper gets them, since Preston gets the paper.
Okay?
He might.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Christy Boring.
Hi, member of the board. Thank you again for allowing me to speak. Let me apologize first. I'm a little under the weather, but I have been on 5 days of antibiotics and no fever, so I don't think I'm contagious. But I wasn't going to come, and I thought to myself after making that decision that I'd probably keep myself if something happened. So I came on. Somewhere I read in doing this research on making proud choices after last month's meeting when it was voted to be held over, that it was voted to be held over so that the board could get their hands on the curriculum and take a look at it yourselves. Somewhere, I don't know if it was one of the newspaper articles or in some of our research that online, I'm not sure what it was from, but I have read that you have not been successful in getting your hands on this curriculum. And I must say I'm really not surprised by that. I wouldn't want to show it to you either. I'm just astounded. I have not went and met with Ms. Rogers at this time because I have been sick and I've rescheduled with her, but I've done a lot of research online looking at this curriculum. And did all the kids leave? Okay. I don't know what else to do except to just read from you. I don't even know if I can do it. It's not a topic that I want to speak of in public. It's not something I'm going to teach my children. I mean, we are not teaching them, much less how to protect themselves from STDs. We are teaching them foreplay with this curriculum. We are teaching them the term mutual masturbation is used in this curriculum. I'm sorry. I'm just very upset over this whole topic. It is ridiculous. It plainly says on page 150 of Making Proud Choices, a module about how to make condoms fun and pleasurable while making proud choices. Make condoms fun and pleasurable. Use condoms as a method of foreplay. Act sexy, sensual when putting condoms on. Hide condoms on your body and ask your partner to find it. That's not even the whole thing, but is that not enough? Is that really what we're going to teach our 14-year-olds? I could go on. I have 5 pages here, and I cannot cover it in 3 minutes. There's just no way. But I really urge the board, I will be here at every meeting till you guys have a vote on this. I really urge you to take a look at this curriculum and read what is in it. This is absurd. It is just plain absurd. And like I said the last time, it doesn't matter if I allow my child to opt out or not. She's going to hear it after that class happens, that day, that week, that month. I'm sure it's going to be the topic of conversation at school. And that is just ridiculous. And it's not teaching our children anything. It's not teaching them how to be safe. It's teaching them how to have sex. If you read this curriculum, that's what it's teaching them. It's not teaching them how to have safe sex. It's not teaching them abstinence. It's not teaching them any kind of morality. And I know that I've gone up over my time, and I appreciate the time you've allowed, but I just really urge you to take a look at this and to really dig deep into it. I mean, you really don't have to dig that deep because it's right there on the paper, but this is not something that I want my daughter or any other child in Iredell County to be taught. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I will remind the audience to try to stick with the 3-minute time frame. This has been deemed as a fair amount of time for each speaker to have by several groups that are elected boards that are expected to give public comment time. And I have been reminded by some of our community watchdogs that we have not been abiding by that time frame as tightly as we should, and there's some perceptions that some people have more time than others, and that may sway the board's opinion. So just in pure thought of fairness to everyone, I will ask Kelly to keep accurate time, and she will hold a little sign or make a comment when that time frame is up, because we do need to stick to that 3 minutes. Next speaker is Debbie Stewart.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight, and I apologize for reading most of this. I get extremely nervous, so I don't want to forget anything. Thank you again, Dr. Cash and Superintendent Johnson and the board for allowing me to come to speak on making good choices. The curriculum. I have 3 students, one at South Iredell High School, a teenager at Troutman Middle, and one at Troutman Elementary who will soon be a teenager. So my house will be very busy. As you can imagine, we deal with a lot of things with sexual education and trying to decide what to allow into our home, what to allow our students to see. As I've been reading through the curriculum for the best choices or the good choices curriculum, I do not think this is in the best interest of our students. I strongly believe that using this curriculum will move our students into a very dangerous position. I want my teenagers to view sex as something that is sacred, something that is within the bonds of matrimony. And I know that in today's world, a lot of students are not going to make that decision. I understand that. But if we do not hold our students to a higher standard, if we do not expect the best from them, I think that we're not raising the bar to which they can achieve their best goals. I do not believe that sex should be taught in the classroom by a stranger that could have very different values than what I have in my home. I think that that is something that we as parents should determine. I completely understand in our world a lot of teenagers do not wait. However, I think we've underestimated how brave and how strong our youth can be. I think they are braver than we think, and if we as adults ask them to raise the bar to where they will make us prouder than perhaps we expect them to. Do I think, or am I naive enough to think that the students will not, that all of the students will choose to abstain from sex? No, mistakes will be made. However, a lot of them will live up to the standards that we hold them up to. As a parent and a youth leader in our community, I implore you to not implement this curriculum countywide. I have firsthand experience of how devastating effects can come from teenage sex. It can be tragic and life-changing. I do not ask this lightly. It is a very personal subject for me. So I ask that you raise the bar for our students and don't lower that expectation, and that they not be taught these in the classroom, that they be taught by parents and loving people in the values that are taught in their home. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Doug Holland.
Dr. Cash and Board, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak before you this evening. My name is Doug Holland, and I am speaking on making proud choices. I have a son who was recognized here tonight as a FFA student and a daughter in our school system. It really concerns me about this program being implemented. It never ceases to amaze me that boards such as yourself often get weak in the knees every time a grant is offered before you, without fully considering the implications once the grant funds run out, what happens next, and this is yet another example. Ms. Rogers has wrongly portrayed this program as a success. The facts don't support this. She has said that the pregnancy rates have dropped, and yes, they have dropped in this county, but there are other programs being implemented that would contribute to this. I'm sure you would agree with that statement. She points out that the surveys are having many positive comments on them. This is not surprising since the students were paid to do those surveys. Ms. Rogers' opinion is biased, in my opinion. As I'm sure you're aware that her salary is paid by the grant funds, and I'm sure she would be very passionate in arguing that this program is a success and needs to continue in our county. But I strongly urge you to disagree with that. This program teaches many things they're not right, morally right. We can teach our kids to say no to drugs. Why can't we teach our kids to just say no to sex? It does not promote abstinence. Over 90% of what is taught in it is about contraceptives and the use of condoms, and it goes way far and beyond what it should in too much detail in describing ways to use these and in describing ways to make them more pleasurable. We're not here to encourage our kids to have sex and to teach them how to make it more pleasurable. There's a moral issue here, and we should encourage our kids to use abstinence as a way to fight, sex education. This program encourages sex by teaching safe sex. Sex education should not focus on damage control, but should by promoting safe sex. In conclusion, I would like to read just a couple statements from it, the curriculum. One is that latex condoms is the only birth control method that prevents sexually transmitted diseases. This is a false statement in itself. There are diseases that can be contacted, such as HPV, with the use of condoms. So the information in the curriculum is false. Also, just to read another statement, it's on page 7, it's entitled Attitude Statements. It would be embarrassing to go to the drugstore to get birth control. Even though it may be embarrassing, you have to work through it because a pregnancy can be more embarrassing. But if a student is too embarrassed to go and buy a condom, he's too immature to be having sex. We should be teaching abstinence. It goes further to say that using condoms would kill the mood or ruin sexual pleasure. Condoms can be made fun, pleasurable, if you know the skills to make them that way. This goes way far beyond what we should be teaching our children in our school system. It is not your job to teach our kids this. It should be taught abstinence. In conclusion, I'd like to say, Dr. Cash, you were recently quoted in the paper as saying the world is watching us as we implemented the use of putting laptops in our students' hands. But I would encourage you and the rest of the board, the world is watching you as you make this decision for our school system. The voters of Iredell County are watching you. And we must promote abstinence as a way of sex education. And if we're going to look for a new sex ed program, I would encourage you to pick one by a best-selling author I know. He wrote the plan. It's one that promotes abstinence. It's one that promotes sex under the guidelines of marriage. And yes, it is a plan that was written and is successful. And the title of that is the Holy Bible. Our Father wrote that plan for us. And I would encourage you as a board to pick a copy of that up and read it and implement it in our school system. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ronnie Wooten.
Brady, Anna, Bill, Charles, Dr. Cash, Chuck, John, and Brian. My name is Ronnie Wooten, and I want to talk to you tonight about making proud and responsible choices, and also about making right choices. I addressed you a bit casually for this meeting tonight for a point. We live in a small town. maybe not quite Mayberry, but we're a small town, so much so that we can usually address each other by first name. I've spent several hours reviewing the Making Proud Choices curriculum, and I've seen all 7 of the DVDs. The Making Proud Choices curriculum clearly states that it was developed and targeted for inner-city youth. Let me read you from the acknowledgement pages of the curriculum. It's page I in the material that you have. It says, Making Proud Choices, an evidence-based safer sex approach to teen pregnancy, STDs, and HIV prevention. It was developed by Dr. Loretta Sweet Jamont, Dr. Constance McCaffrey, and evaluated by Dr. John Jamont III with assistance from Dr. Jeffrey T. Fong. These researchers are committed to ensuring that inner-city youth have long, healthy, and productive lives. Making Proud Choices was developed, piloted, implemented, and evaluated in a study funded by a grant from the National Institute of Mental Health. This study was designed to identify the most effective ways to reduce the health risk of middle school-aged inner-city youth. Our Iredell-Statesville school system is 62% suburban, 38% rural, and only 14% of the population falls below the poverty line. It clearly does not meet the demographics of an inner-city school system for which this curriculum was designed. The curriculum is graphic in nature, explicit in its content and its role-playing activities, and it's my guess that you'll be presented a watered-down version on this final recommendation that's going to come to you at probably the next committee of the whole meeting. And I believe that you already have a watered-down version, as a curriculum that I believe that you were given for review is not the version that I've been reviewing myself. Even though I was told that the curriculum must be taught with fidelity. If you'll look at page 150 of what you have and compare that with what I've been reviewing, you'll see that it's not the same. The wording of page 150 has been dramatically changed. I'll let you be the judge of why your copy was changed. If this watered-down version that's going to be proposed is proposed, my question is, why are we trying to make a square peg fit in a round hole? The curriculum we currently have in our health classes meets the state standards and law, and if we feel we need a better curriculum, then let's find one. But Making Proud Choices is not it. When you vote next month, I'm asking you to make not only a proud and responsible choice in your vote, but that you make a right choice in voting no and implementing this into our school curriculum. Our children deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our list of speakers who actually signed up outside. I'll ask now, are there any other members of the audience that would like to address the board? If not, I thank you all for your interest, and know that we're all making the best decisions we can make and recommendations based on what's best for our children. So we appreciate your input. We asked next, I guess, Mr. Johnson for superintendent comments.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Cash, members of the board. I was thinking about the new year, 2014, and you know, sometimes you hear a word assigned to a calendar. I think the Chinese culture is good about that. And I think if I could pick a word that I would assign to 2014 that I hope is going to be modeled throughout our community and our state and our nation in 2014, it is collaboration. You know, there's generally not too many problems that we cannot fix if we're willing to sit down and talk to each other and do a little give and take in trying to find common solutions to our problems. So my word of the day for 2014 is collaboration and joint decision-making. This board has modeled that over the years, and tonight you had some dissenting votes and some split decisions on some things, but I'm always glad to see that you come back together and continue to do what's in the best interest of children. So I hope as we get into the year 2014 and the General Assembly comes back to town and we start addressing some of the common issues that are facing us as citizens in North Carolina, that we can put our heads together, find common ground, and work together for the good of the kids in our community. I'd also like to say tonight that You know, last week, we had a couple challenging days with the temperature fluctuation and the new record that was set for the low temperature. And that gave us an opportunity to really challenge our school operations division in the school system. And when we talk about school operations, we're talking about the people that are not in those classrooms, but they are out there working on buses. They are working out in our buildings fixing frozen pipes. They are the cafeteria ladies that are coming in early and making sure that there's a hot breakfast and whatnot. So in that challenge that we had last week with the severe weather, our school operations division did rise to the occasion. And there are multiple examples of heroes in action last week. That first morning, we had 67 school buses that would not crank. And I witnessed mechanics working out in that 6 and 7 degree temperature and diligently under those buses, crawling all over the motors and everything, getting those buses cranked. I also witnessed custodians that were coming in early to make sure that furnaces were fired up. Maintenance workers were throughout the county trying to make sure that all of our needs were met. So it was a great example of the collaboration of the school operations division, and my hat goes off to them. So 2014 is shaping up to be a very exciting and a challenging year for us in public education again. I think that there is a lot of positive energy in our school system. The decision that you folks made last week with our technology device selection has sparked a lot of interest both inside the school system and outside the school system. And there are a lot of folks that are celebrating with us as we roll out our technology and get our blended learning initiative well underway. So 2014 is going to be a great year, and I'm expecting it to be one of the best years in the history of our school system, and I look forward to working with you and the community to make sure that we are making wise choices for our children and giving them the best possible access we can to free public education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Just to mention some announcements for those who may have the agenda to follow there. January 20th will be a holiday. January 21st, 22nd will be teacher work days. And February 3rd will be our next committee of the whole meeting at the ADR Education Center at 5 p.m. And then February 10th will be our next Board of Education meeting here at the Government Center at 6 p.m. That concludes our public agenda tonight. We do need a motion to go into closed session to discuss a property issue.
Can you read it? According to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11, make the motion the board enter into closed session to discuss a personnel issue? Property issue.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Not all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you again for your attendance. We'll move into closed session.
I was saving you.